welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Kickabout. Premier League starting back, it's just around the corner. So to build up to that, we have a Liverpool preview podcast for you. So with me today, we have Donnacha, and welcoming back David Kennedy as well. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Cheers, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be here. We're ready to go. How many days are we? We're like T-minus 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, that's it now.
From the circus starting again. So very exciting time. Every single club in the land has delusions of grandeur. We're no different. Ours have legitimacy, I would argue, but I'm sure we can argue the toss on that over the next few minutes.
That's it. So I suppose before obviously the season itself kicks off, we've had a look at a few of the guys in pre-season. The last pre-season game was yesterday. So I presume we've all been keeping an eye on them. Dave, who's kind of stuck out to you, or what have you made of pre-season so far?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think like the star of pre-season, I think, has been the length of pre-season and like the availability of the majority of our squad for pre-season. I think Klopp was only saying the last day that he doesn't remember a pre-season as long as this, and I think I trust what the staff will do in terms of setting us up to peak at the right times in the season. I think I'm really hopeful that it'll stand to us, having that. I think there's been a load of really encouraging performances. I think you've had players who I think everyone beforehand said needed a big pre-season. You're like, so, obviously the players coming back from injury in terms of the centre backs, but also your Chamberlains and Keitas who just haven't had that rhythm, haven't had that run in the team, and I suppose weren't in a position to be thrown in towards the end of last season. So I think you can look at any one of those players and see that there's been real progress and no injuries, which is fantastic. Well, until Sunday. But yeah, like I'm an Naby Keita, fanboy. Like I just every time I see him, I just want to see more of him and things, and I'm really hoping it works out for him. And I think he's had a really good couple of weeks. So he's definitely been the most encouraging thing for me, I think, over the past month or so.
You're ready to be hurt again, Dave.
Oh, for sure. I think I'm gladly opening myself up, like cut my skin open and pour salt in it, whatever it is. Like Naby's my boy. I think like there's no other footballer like him in the league in terms of not necessarily quality, whatever, but just in terms of style of play. Like he's so unique, and I think that's such an asset if it works out. But look, the proof will be in the pudding. The proof has not been in the pudding to date. But yeah, as you said, I'm definitely ready to get hurt.
What I'm not going to do this year, because I've done it the last 3 years and been made look pretty foolish all 3 years. The last 3 years, I've backed Naby Keita to be PFA Player of the Year. I think when he first arrived at maybe 20s, then 33 to 1, last year 40 to 1. So maybe I'm the one putting the curse on him. So I'm not going to back it this year. But like every Liverpool fan up and down the country knows the guy's ability. It's just been curtailed with injuries. I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I feel like maybe in certain situations there's more to it than meets the eye. I'm not sure how he's adapted, like in terms of lifestyle, in terms of personality type. I know he's a very kind of shy character by nature, and maybe he moved to a club that was maybe a little bit too big too soon. I don't know. We can get into that, or maybe not. But certainly it is very good to see everybody fit, firing, and there seems like a genuine sense of glee and giddiness around the squad to start this season. I think it's helped. If there's the two biggest factors of what's contributed to why the vibe seems so good is obviously to see Virgil back in a kit, out there training, playing, and then the other side of it is, from what we saw on Sunday and then again last night, a full Anfield, which you just the difference that makes. Like, I never want to see an empty Anfield ever again in my entire life. I think that's, for me, that's been the star of pre-season, is the fact that we have our crowd back. And I know Liverpool fans particularly can get very romantic when it comes to the Anfield crowd and the Anfield factor, but I do think it's cliched, but I do think it's going to be our biggest signing this season, is having that crowd back, and just the feel good factor is going to return.
Yeah, no, I'd 100% agree with that. Like, the crowd was one of the biggest losses last season, along with obviously all the terrible injuries we got, because there were times when obviously we lost Van Dijk, and then we were kind of still carrying on with the centre backs we had, and then obviously more injuries struck. But there were definitely times, especially through, when we had that losing streak at Anfield for 5 or 6 games. There's no way that happens if we have a crowd in Anfield, because even after the first game, like it would have been the first loss in 3 or 4 years, the crowd would have been like, all right, lads, don't worry about it. It's one loss. We'll go again. Where the more games that happened, but the only kind of exposure they were getting to fans was all the absolute morons on social media. And it was just kind of retreating into this darkness kind of a thing.
Losing 6 on the bounce at home as Liverpool Football Club, it just wouldn't have been allowed.
Yeah, that's literally it.
I'm not saying things would have got vicious or things would have got a little bit colourful, shall we say, in the crowd, but I think the energy from the crowd would have just made that eventuality practically impossible.
It would, because a few of those games, with 20 minutes to go, it was as if we had accepted it, or it was like, okay, well, we've seen this before. It's just going to play out. We're going to have a load of possession, maybe a few chances, then we're not going to score. Where there was definitely a few of them where the crowd were just been like, come on, like, let's have it. Like, but anyway, back to we won't hopefully have to deal with
just on that point. Like, I don't even think it extends to just playing at Anfield. I think like just the fact of having a stadium with atmosphere and people in it, and like sometimes sometimes I actually fancy Liverpool going away to these kind of, say, raucous away nights. Say like Norwich the weekend, like it's going to be packed. They're going to be buzzing for their return to the Premier League and all this. I think that'll suit us. Like, I think that atmosphere brings out the best in our players and things. And if you look at, say, like the Villa 7-2 and things, like I don't think that happens in a full ground. Like I don't think that our players, I suppose, succumb to that weirdness if there's people shouting at them. And it's not just the away fans, it's just the fact of having atmosphere. And I just think that, look, it's not making excuses. Like the season went the way it went, and there's lots of reasons for that. But I just think that like the absolute void that no crowds left just made it a weird season overall. And again, like there's other teams that probably suffer that too. Like we're not the only ones. Again, I heard the point today that like, Sheffield United maybe are a victim of that, or for example, and a few other teams who maybe didn't have the same level of seasons as they had previously might fall in the category too. So look, I think overall it's going to be different this year no matter what. Like whether that translates to more success on the pitch or whatever it is, it's going to be different. There's no doubt in my mind.
I suppose going back there, as you were saying, we've avoided injuries in the most part in pre-season. Obviously, Robertson there picked up a little knock at the weekend. It looks like he should be okay after. He'll only be out for a couple of weeks, hopefully. Talk of he could possibly be back for the Chelsea match, but even if he's not, he should hopefully be back for the start of September. With that, obviously, up steps the Greek scouser, who's obviously been playing a blinder in pre-season. Kostas Tsmikas. Donnacha, what have you thought of him so far?
God, he's an energizer bunny up and down that flank, isn't he? He is. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to be like, oh, I like that band before they were big or any of that sort of cliche bullshit. But I remember him, he was such a standout player at Olympiacos because he was Olympiacos. He was their best attacking outlet, and I'm nailing my colours to the mast right now. I'm not saying he's a better left back than Robertson, not by any stretch. His final ball, his delivery is as good as Andy Robertson's. His ability to cross a ball onto a sixpence, as you saw with Firmino's first goal last night, is frighteningly good. And if Liverpool can control the midfield area, control possession, dictate the play, and play like we did when we charged to the Premier League title, I think Tsmikas could be as effective at left back as Robertson is, and I think he's an absolutely brilliant option to have. Like he had a very difficult first season in terms professionally, but apparently within the squad, like he's one of the more popular lads. Like he's loud, he's vocal, he's a good laugh. Him and Mo are supposedly really good mates now, and yeah, as you said, he refers to himself as the Greek Scouser. And he's not getting down on himself, even though he didn't get a chance last season. And I'm sure Jurgen Klopp's probably done a really good job in explaining this, like here's the situation. We've got no players in our back four. This is the one guy who knows the system and he has to play every week in Robertson. So you hate seeing anyone injured. You hate seeing Robbo injured. He's still obviously first choice left back, but I don't feel we're going to lose too much. And I'm actually really excited to see Costas go and to see him, start 4 games, start a Champions League game, and show everyone what you're about. Because a lot of Liverpool fans just haven't really seen him. At the most we've seen of him is in this pre-season. I think he's had at least 3 assists, if not more, and he's been really at it, like really, really at it.
This is the thing, Dave, because obviously, as Donnacha said, we're obviously not delighted with the fact that Robertson's injured. But like when we signed him, obviously, we would have looked into him. When it's announced he's a new Liverpool signing, you kind of do your bit of research and be like, oh, what's this player been up to? As far as I remember, he was left back in the team at the season before we signed him. Looking at the YouTube clips and stuff like that, he looked like a really progressive left back and the left back, in the mold of Robertson and the type we need. So obviously you don't want Robertson to be injured, but I'm kind of excited to see him and actually, be allowed to have a run in the team and see what he's about.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's no two ways about it to my mind. Like losing Andy Robertson to injury makes us a weaker team than the alternative. But that said, like you said, it's exciting. Like it's great to see a new player getting a chance in the team. And like at the end of the day, like it's a squad game. Like there's a reason why we have players of this for backup, and that's so that they can step in when they're needed. This is just quite an unprecedented situation that he was there for a year and barely played. It's quite exciting. But like his like Donnacha said, his final ball looks really good. Again, it's a small sample size. Again, we know from what you see on YouTube highlights and stuff from Olympiacos, what we've seen in pre-season. Again, it's nothing it's not a huge sample, but like the even his whip from like a dead ball is incredible. Like, I know that there was talk a few years ago that when Robertson first started taking set pieces for us, that Trent used to roll the ball to him because he didn't have a clean strike on a moving ball. And it's obviously something he's been working on because now he does seem to take dead balls and things. But I think like even some of the corners Tsmikas was taking last night were like the serious whip on them. He's a really interesting technique of striking the ball. Really exciting. Just one of those players who's excellent to see going forward and just linking up with the players ahead of him. I think like he linked up really well with Minamino yesterday. I'm really excited to see what he can do with our more first choice attackers in the team. On the other hand, going backwards, I think it was the Hertha Berlin friendly. He was he's not at fault, but like 2 goals came from his side. Like the right winger there kind of set up 2 of their goals or in that space basically. And again, does it happen with Robertson there? Who knows? I think we do take for granted the fact that when Robertson plays, we essentially have a left back who never makes defensive errors for whatever. Like he just rarely seems. I can think of barely any goals or even chances that we've conceded over the last 3 or 4 years that have come from Robertson. He just doesn't seem to make mistakes. And I think we have to be accepting of the fact that might not be the case for the next few weeks. But look, again, you're never going to have a situation whereby you have a player out injured and the person you're bringing in is the same, if not better. It's going to be different. Let's embrace it. Let's get behind him. I think it's going to be exciting for sure. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he can do.
It's exciting, I suppose, when you think about it from the fact of, like you're saying, it's a player we haven't seen and, they're liable to make mistakes because they're not, of the same quality of, the players we have in our starting 11 are there for a reason. They're players who've won the Champions League and the league for us. So obviously there's going to be a drop off. But just as you were saying it there, that's the same argument that's kind of the same narrative when, we lost the likes of Van Dijk and Gomez and Matip and we had, Williams and Phillips and stuff coming in, where I think it's more promising now the fact that, okay, we lose Robertson and Tsmikas comes in, but he's coming into a defence that will have the likes of Trent or, Virgil and Gomez and Konate and all with him. So it'll be a far stronger defensive unit that he's part of. So like that, when any of the young lads came in last year, it kind of even hindered, I remember we were chatting about it at the time, it hindered the likes of Trent and stuff because they didn't feel they could kind of attack as much because they felt they had to kind of, help the lads along kind of. But if we have a solid defence, Tsmikas is just allowed, he'll be given the license to do what he does kind of and get forward like Robertson would be doing.
Yeah, Klopp is on the record of having said that like the reason why we didn't see more of Tsmikas or even Nico Williams and things is that because there was no stability elsewhere in the team. And look, like you can look at the way Robertson's performance has probably tailed off just pure fatigue, I'm sure, and say, okay, could he have done something different? But I completely understand it as well. And if you're Tsmikas coming in trying to establish yourself in English football, and you look inside you and Reece Williams is there, again, it's a completely different entity to playing beside Virgil van Dijk or Joe Gomez or Joel Matip. So I get it. I think look, we are where we are with it, and like I said, I'm just excited to see what he can do, because the body of evidence that we've seen so far in pre-season is really encouraging.
Yeah,
it feels to me like there's a lot of, so Liverpool Twitter is a different entity to the Liverpool fan base in that it's irrational and childish and unreasonable, and it's just not a good place to be, and everybody is just freaking out on Liverpool Twitter because about lack of signings and whatnot. But it feels, back in the normal world with normal fans who support the club and love the club, it seems like there's a lot of blank slates that exist going into this season, and we've only signed Konate. He looks like a monster. Now, I'm sure we'll expand on it and chat about him in greater detail, but it feels like there's been more than one signing. Like, it does feel like Minamino scored a couple of cracking goals when he went to Southampton. There's a question mark over, there's something not right there in terms of his place in the squad, because every time I see him play, especially last night, he's really bright, industrious. He's two-footed. He's got decent vision. He's not going to shift one of the front four. I'll include Jota in that. But I think he is decent backup, and I think he's got a clean slate. I think Ox has a clean slate. The fact that this is the first pre-season that he's actually been able to take part in, and he looks sharp. He looked really good yesterday.
Incredible yesterday.
They're having a look at him potentially being a false nine. I think that could work. There's a clean slate there. There's definitely not a clean slate for Naby Keita. He's in the last chance saloon now, but it does feel like guys who we've been missing for quite a while are coming back into the fold and can really contribute this season. Obviously, Harvey Elliott being another one. He just seems as if his potential ceiling hasn't been found yet. We don't know how high it is. I know, Dave O'Hara, I know you spoke just before we started about the similarity between his championship season statistically and Jack Grealish's best championship season down there. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. Jack Grealish is a £100 million player. Harvey Elliott's 18 years of age, but statistically, he had him covered that season. Like, we don't know how good he is. I suspect the answer to that question is very, very, very good. He's one of the most interesting situations for me this year, because he can play in either line. He can play in the midfield three, or he can play further advanced.
That's the one that was interesting me, yeah.
Really interesting. Like, I don't know. I would love to know where Klopp has him in his hierarchy right now, because it's really hard to know.
Yeah, the fact that he was played in midfield more so than the front three over pre-season tape was something that I found really interesting. The first game he was put there, it was something that really took me by surprise. But also, it could be along the lines of, when Trent was coming up the academy and kind of a couple of years before he breaks through, they kind of have to chat with him. They're like, okay, what's your route into the first team here? Then they switch him from centre midfield to right back. You'd wonder, is it along those lines? In terms of, obviously we would have always thought of Elliott as kind of a right winger, but obviously we have the Egyptian king Mo Salah there, so it's obviously going to be, and as we, there's always the talk of like, oh, these players are a year older. Like, everyone's always a year older every year, right? That argument always makes me laugh. But like that, the front three are all 29, but like, Mo is still going to want to be playing at the highest level for years, so it's going to be hard to budge him. So maybe the midfield is his way through to the first team.
Yeah, I think that pathway argument's actually really interesting, because like you said, like our best player plays in his position. So like if you're Harvey Elliott, and again, we're a big team or whatever, and we don't have to pander to anyone, but like he came here to become a first team player for Liverpool, and I'm sure when he signed and we got him ahead of Real Madrid or whoever else was in for him at the time, that there is assurances given that, look, there's a way into this team for you, So I think it's really interesting that they're doing the midfield thing with him this preseason. I would be surprised if he is at the top of the pecking order for the serious stuff coming up. I think it's a perfectly reasonable kind of experiment to do and to try him out there, because again, like you said, probably is a more realistic path into the team. But I still see him being more maybe of like an impact sub League Cup player for the first couple of months anyway. Particularly if we have the new 9 sub on the bench kind of set up. I think it's a great move because it allows you to put your Elliott on the bench and you can bring him on if you're 2 or 3-0 up, rather than having to kind of construct a subs bench with the contingency that you might be losing or drawing, for example. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility there, and I think that'll be to his benefit. I've liked him in midfield. I do think it was interesting. Like his best moment of preseason was when he dropped his shoulder twice, curled it against the bar, when he had moved back into his what we would call his more natural position. So there might be something in that. I do think that like you see it in his numbers last year, like he's a numbers player. Like, you know, he gets goals, he gets assists, and you might lose that a little bit from midfield. I think people often think that, oh look, if you take a front three player, pull them back into midfield, they'll keep the same numbers and we'll just have more goals and assists as a team. But it doesn't always work like that. But like, you know, he's done his chances absolutely no harm over the past couple of weeks. He looked great on Sunday. I think he saved his best performance of preseason to last, which does his stake and his reputation absolutely no harm. But yeah, I'm a little bit. I don't think he's as far ahead in the pecking order in midfield as the selections in preseason might suggest. That's just my.
No, I totally agree. But by the same measure, it would make no sense for him to stay at Liverpool this season if he wasn't going to make at least 15, 20 appearances. I just think he's at a really crucial part of his development now, in that he's had a season of first team football to which his manager at Blackburn called him exceptional and was just really effusive in his praise for him and said, you know, he's a game changer. He has that really special ability to change a game by himself, whether it's creating chances, whether it's finishing himself. And with all that momentum, I think it would be really detrimental to his growth now if he plays 23s for most of the year and gets the odd cup match. So what will be really interesting is he registered for the Champions League squad? And I would hope the answer to that will be yes. But that'll give you a really good injury. Yeah. I think, is the Champions League squad 23 or is it 25?
I think it's 25, but there's different rules around under 21s depending on how long they've been at the club.
That's right. Actually. Oh yeah, you can have as many as you want.
So he mightn't necessarily have to register one.
It depends on how long he's like. I mean, we signed 2019, yeah, potentially. But look, I think like if we'll probably talk about transfers and outgoings and things, but if Shaqiri's off, I think he takes Shaqiri's place in the squad. I think it's a stylistic fit. It's a better fit for us in terms of contingency for the future and stuff. And that's what I see happening. Obviously, getting rid of players that we deem surplus to requirements has been the challenge, and I think you look across world football and it's the exact same everywhere. But that's where I see him fitting in for sure. And again, like you said, Donnacha, I think that if that translates to 15, 20 games, then I think that's a really good season for him at 18, turning 19.
Yeah, 100%. So I suppose, so moving slightly off Liverpool for a minute. Well, I suppose kind of just looking at it in a broader sense in terms of transfers. Like that, I suppose I was just thinking there as well, like, you know, over the last few years, it seems kind of every summer, you know, there's the same kind of 6 or 7 heads coming back, and you see them, you know, in the Liverpool training kit, training with the lads over in Evian and stuff like that. You know, and you know, there's the same talk every year, like, oh yeah, if we get the right bid in for Origi, Shaqiri, Wilson, whatever, yeah, we'll listen to those offers, and otherwise, you know, they'll probably go out on loan. You know, we had a decent start in terms of outgoings, you know, with the likes of actually selling Grujic and just recently Harry Wilson and stuff for decent fees. You know, obviously with, you know, whether it's right or wrong in the eyes of the fans, the kind of the transfer strategy of the owners in terms of, you know, generally balancing the books kind of in terms of outgoings and ingoings. We've gotten Konate in. There's talk of maybe Shaqiri going out. You know, there's always talk of Origi going, but I never see any actual solid suitors.
I mean, who's buying?
Yeah, like that's always whenever there's the talk, it's like, oh grand, we'll get rid of Shaqiri and Origi, and I'm like, who of any decent quality is going to be signing Origi? But so obviously we've signed Konate, you know, and we have the likes of say Elliott and Tsmikas and stuff like that, who, you know, haven't been involved in the first team much, so seem almost like new signings for this season. Dave, I'll come to you first actually on this. Who, you know, we've gotten the one signing in so far, and there's still a couple of weeks left before the transfer window closes. What kind of 1 or 2 signings are you hoping we make or are looking to make?
First things first, I think it's entirely possible that we do nothing. I like not to be pessimistic about it, but I do think that is likely. Everything seems to be slow moving, doesn't it? Like if you look around the league, like some some teams like West Ham, they haven't done anything as far as I know. Like like there's a lot of I suppose stasis, and I think that COVID and the way the shift in terms of money in the game has gone so towards England has left a lot of teams in a situation where they have players they might want to upgrade on. So for us, it's Origi and Shaqiri basically. But if you can't get rid of those players, then who you don't have space to register them, like in terms of our strategy and I suppose policies around transfers. There's no money there to bring them in. There's no room in the wage bill. So like you get stuck a little bit. So I think like look, it's probably more likely that Divock Origi retires in the next month than gets sold, just based on who would take him. And like if I'm Divock Origi, like I understand why you might want to stay, because that might suit you. I get that from his perspective, and I'll always love him for what he's done, even though he's produced pretty much nothing on the pitch for about 18 months now. But I think that is the one area that's the one position in the squad I think we need to upgrade on. Again, it's contingency planning for the future for the front three. Like I said, I think that the Shaqiri to Wilson swap makes the most sense for me. I think that Thiago is the replacement for Wijnaldum, signed a year early. And I think Konate filled the biggest hole in our squad in terms of being a centre back light. So like to me, we could be done. I would love us to see an incoming front three player who's in that kind of say 21 to 24 bracket, a little bit a la Jota, particularly if we could do say maybe a fee structuring thing that we did with Jota last summer. I think that might work. I don't see us signing midfielder personally.
Yeah, the fee structures actually we did last season were phenomenal, weren't they? In terms of Jota and Thiago. I think we got the two of them for about 7 or 8 million up front.
Yeah.
Something like that, something silly like that. Yeah,
and like while bringing in the big money for Hoover and Brewster, like it looking back.
Because Brewster was about 20 million, wasn't
he? 25, and then Kiana was he 15? It's 40 million quid right there. Yeah, there's Konate sorted.
Yeah,
and that's how it works. Like that, like again, like, whether you like it or not, that's how it works in terms of how our owners do it. And like like as a sporting and business enterprise, I think that's completely legitimate. It makes it more sour when you see them still selling the club down to Swanee to go send them to the Super League, because you think that they're trying to do things sustainably and ethically. But overall, as a policy, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, Donnacha, just touching on that, on the transfer policy, I suppose, playing devil's advocate. Looking around the transfer window, especially the last couple of weeks, Grealish going to City for 100 million. Chelsea are looking to get Lukaku for about 100.
That's going through as well. I mean, like, it's easy for as a Liverpool fan, it is easy to get frustrated with transfers, and like looking beyond your own club. I always thought was a bit of a redundant kind of hobby to indulge in. Like, I mean, yeah, you can look at what City are doing, and is Harry Kane going to be wearing light blue in the next couple of weeks? More than likely, yes. But that shouldn't affect what Liverpool's plans are. That shouldn't induce some sort of panic of, oh, okay, let's talk to Mbappe's agent and see if we can spread the transfer fee over 78 years. So. Like Klopp has a clear vision. I think what's been a real difficult challenge is how ruthless are you with a squad that has delivered everything you've ever dreamt of. So how ruthless are you with Bobby Firmino? How ruthless are you with Mane? Is a really interesting one, because he had a poor season last year. I do believe it was down to fatigue. I do think he feeds off the crowd more than a lot of other players do. So I'm expecting it like normal service resume with Sadio this season. But Mane right now is still probably worth, like, is he worth 50, 60 million? You would say, yeah, based on reputation, like surely he is.
Mane, absolutely, yeah.
Do you get like, so it gets really difficult now, because we know historically that a lethal front three. Like the game isn't designed for longevity up top of the pitch anymore, because you get found out eventually if you lose half a yard of pace. So I think Salah's an outlier. I think with Salah, 35 is the new 30. Sign him up for another 7 years. He'll end as an absolute legend and he'll score so many goals. But the succession planning for maybe from next year onwards makes the transfers really, really difficult. Because if you look in the market right now, look at our team, look at City, look at Chelsea, who've been really active. They're buying players that can improve their starting 11. City, the Grealish ones, actually, why they bought Grealish before they got Kane done, it makes no sense at all. When you've got Grealish sitting on the bench with two of his new teammates starting ahead of him for England in similar positions, and City do not have a striker, because I just don't rate Jesus, and I'm not sure whether Pep does as a goal scorer at this stage either. But they're improving their starting 11. Like, beyond us buying Mbappe, how do Liverpool improve our starting 11?
See, that's the big thing, isn't it? Because like that, all the Mars are just improving the starting 11. Where that's then when Twitter, LFC Twitter goes into meltdown. Like, oh, why aren't we signing these players? But sure, we already have multiple players worth, 60, 70, 80 million. So
find me a central midfielder who we could buy, who comes in and is an automatic starter ahead of a fully fit Jordan Henderson, Thiago, and Fabinho.
Yeah.
Who's that player? Is it Grealish?
Any sort of logical Liverpool fan, if they're all fit, I don't know if there's anyone you'd want instead of any of this radar, in my opinion, anyway.
No, I agree, and I think the options in midfield are strong. Like, obviously, the big question marks over Ox and Keita in terms of their fitness are legitimate. Do we need one more? Like, if we buy Renato Sanchez in the morning for 40 million quid, does that change your outlook and how the season's going to pan out? Because it doesn't change. It'd be like, personally, I would want Florian Neuhaus from Mönchengladbach, because I really, really like him as a footballer in lots of different ways. But even if we bought him, I wouldn't be like, oh, well, he's got to start ahead of Henderson or Thiago. So, like, this summer's transfer window, like, our signings had to be get a world-class centre-back. The jury will naturally still be out, but Konate looks like a monster so far. I've been amazingly impressed, as has everyone around the club by the looks of it. And then tie down your stars. So Fab's tied down, Trent's tied down. Hopefully Salah, if he's going to be the highest paid player in the club's history, do either of you have an issue with that? Because I absolutely do not.
Blank check for me. Just give him what he wants.
Give him 100%. I adore him, and I want
bring Lovren back if he wants. I don't mind. Like,
bring him back just to be there for Salah, not necessarily even on a player contract.
Yeah. And once, and Alisson then as well. Like, so once you've done that, the next 2-3 years are safe. And then you can start having dialogue with those players, because eventually, like, we're gonna have to replace Firmino probably first, if his levels don't bounce back, and I don't suspect they will, and then Mane. But it's definitely not a time for panic. Like, I'm really quite quietly confident about this season. Like, I don't think we're going to win the league. I'll put that one in audio form, and for the record, I think Chelsea are actually going to win the league. I think we can run them close, and I think we can beat City. Genuinely, because I think there are problems in that City side still. And I think if they lose Diaz, or even if they lose Stones, I think Nathan Ake is not really up to much. And I think the cracks can appear in that squad very quickly. And you see what they're like without Fernandinho, and he's getting on now.
Sure, he was getting on when they were having him in centre-back 2 seasons ago.
No, I know. Like, all right. Kane goes into City, guaranteed 20-goal striker, Kevin De Bruyne feeding him. Like, on paper, you're like, okay, they're going to win every game 6-0. But football isn't that straightforward. There's just, I think Chelsea will be the team this year. United will get closer. It's going to be really competitive top 4. I think there will be a gap.
because just on that as well, because Kane, obviously they lose Aguero, Kane comes in more so than just literally that replacement. He's almost an exact replacement in terms of a really top quality striker who, whether if you look at it every single season, will be out for a decent period of the season. So it's not like he's getting a fully fit world class striker to come in. So they're going to have 30 more goals than they would have had. It's really, you're only replacing maybe 15 goals or so. But yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. I suppose going into this season, obviously it's starting at the weekend. I think Liverpool do have a good shout at winning the league. Obviously, there's always the Liverpool optimism of, oh, this is going to be our year. But
do I think Liverpool can win the league? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think we will this season? I think there's a legitimate chance of claiming number 7. Because I think you do, again, you have the bones of a phenomenally good cup side. That Liverpool 11. It will come back. It will come down to that depth. You need a goal. You need someone off the bench to change a game when you're away. You're away against Newcastle. It's not really happening. Is Minamino going to come on and win the game for you? Hope so. No, but if that's Chelsea's situation, Pulisic comes off the bench, or Havertz comes off the bench. If it's City, Foden comes off the bench, or fucking Jack Grealish comes off the bench. So yeah, that is a very obvious weakness that we have. But in terms of blow for blow, you can only have 11 players on the pitch at any one time, and our starting 11 is just as good as anyone in the leagues, and has the experience of playing with each other longer. So.
And a lot of the players in the team have been there and done it. Like that, Chelsea are obviously looking very strong. Obviously, I suppose you'd nearly forget the fact that they've just won the Champions League. I often do.
You would, because it was a weird season. It was a weird. It was a very weird Champions League with how Liverpool went out and should that game have been played, and it was just bizarre. And then having a little mini tournament in Portugal. I'm not like illegitimizing that win. They won the Champions League. They were the best side, but it was just a weird one. It was a bit of a, yeah. Does it carry? No, it has to carry the weight of every European. No, it does. You can't say, "Oh, that one doesn't count." Like it obviously counts, but it was just fucking strange,
The one little thing, the one moment of joy I got from obviously the crap situation of it being two other English clubs in the final, City and Chelsea. The one thing going into the final, because obviously it was I'd just love it if both of them could lose. But the one thing I liked was the final was due to be on in Istanbul, and the thought of one of those clubs also having Istanbul as a glorious memory.
Yeah,
I was very happy that it got changed and wasn't in.
Yeah, hands off our stadium, 200 kilometers in the middle of nowhere.
But yeah, so I suppose looking forward to the weekend, and obviously the season to come. What do we think? As we, obviously Donnacha there saying, obviously, I think Chelsea and City are obviously going to be strong. United again, they've strengthened as well, so they'll definitely be up with a shout. If not for top 4, they might have one similar to last season in terms of they'll be challenging until Christmas, and then they'll be, proclaiming that they've won the league, and then they'll veer off. But I suppose with the fact that the fans are back and stuff like that, I actually think Bobby Firmino is going to have a great start to the season, because I think if you were to pick one player out of the whole team who thrives the most off the crowd, I think it's Bobby Firmino. Dave, how do you see the first couple of months going in the season?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. I think just on the kind of transfer side of things, I agree with Donnacha in the sense. I think Chelsea are better set, because I think City still have so much work to do. Obviously this Kane saga is going to drag out, but then once they sign him, they have to start selling people. They haven't sold anyone yet. I know they've let Aguero go on a free, but they're gonna have to get Bernardo Silva out. Laporte is gonna go, is he? I don't know. And then
there's even talk of Sterling being gone.
But this is it. I don't see that. But I suppose then are they gonna sell Jesus? There seems like there's a lot of change still to happen in that squad. And then when Laporte's going, they've lost Eric Garcia. You're down to Stones, Diaz, and Ake, right? Like, so it just seems to me that there's a lot that's going to happen at City in the next 3 weeks. So look, they have enough money, like they'll be fine, like they'll sort it out. But again, if you look at the preseason we've had, where it's been very settled, 6 weeks, Austria, France, everyone there, everyone happy, all the injured players back, great. It looks to me like City's window is still very much alive, and a lot will happen. And I think, like, if you look at Chelsea, like they had the most players at the Euros of any team in Europe, I want to say. Like, it was something like 18 or something crazy like that. Again, a lot of them went deep, the England lads, the Italy players and things. So, like, I think, like, my optimism comes from the fact that we might have a good advantage in the first couple of weeks of the season, where we've had our players there, everyone's raring to go. With the optimism of having the injured players back, let's go. The tests will come when it gets to the winter and Afcon and all of this. And again, that's I'm very much like in my supporter head saying let's cross that bridge when we come to it, because I don't actually know what's going to happen just yet. And maybe it'll be a glimpse of the post front three Liverpool that we going to get early. But I'm very optimistic. I think our fixtures are falling pretty nicely. Couldn't really have asked for better for the first 10 games or so. Gets a bit sticky, into the autumn and things. But I think even with the way the Champions League, the post-Champions League fixtures have fallen, they're actually not too bad for us either and things. So look, there's loads to be optimistic for. And I think if we start well, who knows? Let's see how it goes. All you want is for the season to be alive in April. That's all you can ever want at the start of a season, I think, is just to be sitting there on the 1st of April after that March international break, and to have a genuine sense of your season being alive and something to play for, whether it's Champions League, whether it's League, whatever it is, hopefully both. But that's how I see it going. I don't know about United. Like, I don't really know how they got however many points they got last year. Like, I didn't ever seem to be that impressed by them when I watched them.
They had a great season, and we nearly took second off them.
Yeah, this is it. and like they didn't have any slumps in form, and I mean, like they came from behind so much, particularly away and things. Like I don't see how that can happen again. I think, like, eventually, if you keep giving teams head starts, you're going to get punished for it. But remains to be seen. Like, Sancho's an amazing player. Varane's a elite defender. Let's see how they settle. But again, those players are only starting training this week. And again, it comes back to my point that we've been there since the first week of July. And I think that does stand for something. And I think particularly when your manager is Jurgen Klopp and you have Pep Linders and Peter Kravic and Victor Matos as your team, I think, like, it couldn't have been better for us, really. Forget the transfer window. Like, that's the summer that Jurgen wanted, I think.
Exactly.
The point of having a settled full pre-season, I think it's a decent it would be a decent bet that, like, I'm not just getting wildly rose tinted glasses here, but I think after 10 games, if Liverpool are top of the league, I'm almost expecting it, given it how the fixtures are set up. I know we've got Chelsea early doors, but I just think the Anfield roar, that bounce, and the feel-good factor, and we all know how difficult last season was to be a supporter. It just really felt like work. Every game felt like work, because you were trying to achieve something that had been the minimum for previous seasons, and there was all these obstacles, and there was Murphy's Law swimming about the place with everyone getting injured. But just going back to Dave's point on the African Cup of Nations, I think that's really going to do us in, because if you take out Salah and Mane plus one injury to an attacking player, all of a sudden we're enormously thin there. Like, all right, let's say Salah, Mane gone, and Jota gets injured, like what happened against the Danish side last year. Like, now that's a big problem. Now you're basically as capable of scoring goals as Newcastle are for 2 months. Like, I don't like how that could potentially go. I think that's a real elephant in the room, the Afcon.
With that one, Donnacha, just sorry, because I had actually forgotten about the Afcon. So I just wanted to say as well, because I remember, obviously, that was such a big deal the last time it happened. But with this season coming, there's kind of a 2-week break in January that just happens to coincide with kind of around when Afcon starts.
Not as many.
So even if the lads get to the final, I think the max they could miss, I think, is 2 Premier League games. So it's actually not, because I was definitely really worried about the fact that Afcon and that we'd be losing Mane and Salah, because I think the last time it happened, did we only have Mane? I think, as far as I remember.
Yeah, 2017, wasn't it? And we didn't win for 2 months.
yeah, exactly. So obviously, yeah, that was a big worry. But yeah, I think their potential. I think it just happens to fall relatively okay. And I think I just have it there. Like if it's the 2 weeks I'm thinking of, the two games they'll miss are Brentford at home and Crystal Palace away. So
7-0 last week.
Harvey Elliott hat-trick.
Yeah. Well, no, that then colors the picture in a different shade again. Like, I don't know. Do we want to? Are we bold enough to start making predictions about top fours? And I happily will, because I love a prediction. Even though
fire away. Yeah, you go ahead, Donnacha.
All right, mine is going to be pragmatic, but I think Chelsea are going to win the league. I think they're going to have an exceptional season. I think they are going to be a powerhouse, and I'm very much afraid of Thomas Tuchel and his abilities as a coach. And I'm even more afraid if they take Werner out that side and put Lukaku in.
That's what I was going to say. I think Lukaku is going to be phenomenal for them.
Fucking terrifying. And also get in my fancy football team, Romello. Chelsea, I think Liverpool will beat City to second. I think United will be streets ahead of whoever comes in fifth. I think depending on what happens with Spurs, let's say they lose Kane and they bring in Martinez and Vlahovic from Fiorentina, I still think they're going to really struggle. I actually think that Arsenal are maybe going to turn a bit of a corner this season, although I thought they'd turn a corner last season. But I would still say that Leicester had pipped them, so I'd go Leicester fifth, Arsenal sixth, and then I would put someone ahead of Spurs seventh, possibly Villa, to be fair, because I think they've bought really, really well. Yeah, and then after that, does it even matter? we'll let the blue shite. We'll give them a top 10 under Rafa.
Balances it out.
Even though he's buying players for a tenner at the minute.
Yeah, players who were at their peak like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, Townsend is that's such a mysterious signing.
Into Florida to playing in cups that don't exist by the time they get there. That was
yeah. Hey, what are you thinking? What are we looking at top four?
Yeah, it's so hard to call. I'm honestly like flip-flopping. It's the same as trying to pick a fantasy football team. Like every time I look at my phone, I'm changing it, and it's the same as with this. I think it's really hard to say. I think Chelsea won the Champions League, and they're bringing in, like, to my mind, probably the out and out best or one of the top 2 or 3 best number 9s in world football. Like I just rate Lukaku so highly. I think he's amazing.
I think it's just his ability to score goals, no matter who it is, no matter what the circumstance is, no matter what style of football his team plays. He just gets goals. He's a bit of a trampoline at times. You hit a ball up to him and it comes back at you. Like, he doesn't have the class of a Harry Kane. He doesn't have. Man's just numbers though. He's numbers. He's sheer numbers.
He can do it all. He's so quick. There's a compilation of some of his assists for Inter even last year, and there's one in the Champions League. It's an outside the left boot cross into Lautaro Martinez. It's like he just has such ability. I think he's a real, like, it's scary that Chelsea are signing him. I don't know. Like I said, I think it's too early to call with City because I'm not sure what they're going to do. Because I do think that, it's 3 weeks till the end of August. I think things are going to change there. So at present, I think City are still favourites. I think that our longevity can see us ahead of Chelsea. But just depends on how Lukaku settles. So I'll go City 1, Liverpool 2, Chelsea 3 for now. United 4, as you said. Leicester 5 for sure. 6, again, I don't really care about 6 either. Easily be Arsenal. Don't think it'll be Spurs. Don't really see anyone else breaking that unless Leeds really kick on. The Villa thing is interesting. You look at Villa and you say, okay, they've done really good business. I really like Buendia. I think he's great. But look at the last 2 times an English team sold a £100 million plus player and replaced him with 6 or 7 players. It was Spurs selling Bale and us selling Suarez, and we know how those 2 seasons went.
Yeah, disastrous.
As good as it looks on paper, I think the proof again will be in the pudding there. But yeah, I think Ings, Buendia, big players there. I think they're doing really well. But yeah, I don't know. Ask me tomorrow, I'll give you a different answer.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think it is. Obviously, it's always so hard to call because a month into the season, the whole landscape of the season can be looking different than the start of it. That's always the thing with fantasy football as well, isn't it? You think you've analysed all the preseason games and who's coming back from internationals and stuff like that, and then 2 weeks in you're looking to use your wildcard. But yeah, I do think I'm backing Liverpool to win the league. I just think absolutely everything that could go wrong went wrong for us last season. We lost, probably every player at some point, and still managed to come third. We conceded, with two centre midfields at times in centre back, and with our 7th and 8th choice centre backs, we still managed to concede less goals than United, who finished second, which I think is an astounding fact. We've Van Dijk back, we've Gomez back, Konate is looking like an absolute monster. I'm far more comfortable, with the two of them. Like, obviously Van Dijk in particular, but obviously I'm a big fan of Gomez as well. And either him or Konate, if you're looking on the pitch and the two of those are there, you're just far more confident, and that kind of just oozes through the team. So yeah, I fully expect kind of the team to be back purring like they were the year we won the league, and obviously the year before when we won the Champions League as well.
Just on that, I think Matip is a shoe in to start the first three. And like I don't know what they're going to do with Virgil and Gomez, because I think it's clear to see they're not at the speed yet.
No, they surely won't start at the weekend.
Yeah, there was talk it was going to be Konate and Matip for a few games, wasn't it?
But I think Matip's had a brilliant preseason, and again, I think all 4 defenders have done well. But I think Matip's been the standout for me, and I think he just gives us so much in terms of front foot, playing good passes into midfield, just again beating your press by just being able to sidestep pass someone.
His ability to step out is so underrated. Why do people outside of Liverpool fans not talk about when Joel Matip goes walkabout? He usually stops walkabout on the opposition's 18-yard box, and he's laid it off somewhere. He's so good stepping out of that centre half position.
Just because he is size 15 feet doesn't mean he's not good.
That's what I was going to say. It's because he looks so gangly. That's why people think it's an awkward thing. But it's always a really, really positive thing in our attack when he does it.
Yeah, and again, like it's an attacking weapon and things. These are things like, those games that we lost 6 in a row at home and you couldn't break down defenses, like small things like that. Like, okay, they're not going to get you 10 goals a season, but like it can open up the game a little bit for our front three. And like there was times that season where it just looked like we were completely out of ideas, and like the concept of Nat Phillips doing that and stepping into midfield is just was never going to happen. I'm excited. I'm excited to have Matip back again. We know he's pretty much made of crisps, but hopefully he'll at least see us through until Virgil's up to speed.
It is the thing with. No, go ahead, Donnacha.
I was just going to say another like sort of unintended upside of having the lads back and adding Konate into that mix is, if you noticed last season, how many corners were swung into the box and no one is capable of getting their head in it. And then eventually we all know what happened when we send the goalkeeper up. But before Alisson scored that legendary goal, and my God, let's just keep watching that every day for the rest of our lives, we could not score from a corner. And those kind of 10, 12, 15 goals a season are so crucial. If it's just, if you're half an hour into a game, you can't break a low block. And now you've got Virgil can score goals, Matip can score goals. Konate surely can score goals, because look at the size and strength and speed of him. Yeah. I think an unintended upswing is just going to be the fact that you're going to get 10 or 12 goals that come from our centre halves this season. We
lost goals in the team hugely last year. We're like, okay, Salah kept scoring at the same rate. If anything, probably scored more. Obviously, we know about Firmino and Mane dropping off, but like our 4th highest scorer in the league winning season was Chamberlain. Again, he got like 7 or 8 goals from midfield. Again, got 1 last year maybe. Next is Virgil, got 5 or 6. Again, got 1 probably at the first day of the season and things. So like we lost a lot of goals from all over the team basically. And again, I think, like, Ox might not get 7 goals this season, but again, it's another threat. And again, if you look at a starting lineup in every given game, and I always like tried to work out, okay, who is the most likely to score. Obviously, we know our front three are likely to score. If your next most likely player is Jordan Henderson or Thiago or something, you're not carrying much of a goal threat. Whereas having players like like Elliott in midfield or Ox or Van Dijk at the back, again, you're opening up a huge amount more opportunity to get goals.
Well, you could argue that trait in a team of finding goals from other places in the park is what won City the league, thanks to Ilkay Gundogan. Didn't expect him to score, and he just kept scoring, kept coming into the box late. He looked like a little mini Frank Lampard, and it makes such a big difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I'm nailing my flag to the post there. I think they're going to win. I think Liverpool win the league. I just think with the lads back and with the fans back, I think there's going to be such a lift. And we all know the effect Anfield can have. Obviously every club didn't have had empty stadiums, but the effect the Anfield crowd can have on the team, I just think that'll be able to push us over the line. I think whether or not City get Kane will determine whether they would, I suppose, push us close or come second or third. Obviously, it looks like they probably will get him. Like 3 weeks is still a long time in the transfer window.
He will. He'll go. I mean,
yeah.
if they're already making conversations for Martinez, and apparently they're interested in Vlahovic as well.
Yeah.
What will probably transpire is in the next few days you'll hear that Lautaro Martinez plays for Spurs, so does Vlahovic, and then all of a sudden that money goes back out with Kane. So they'll probably try and buy 4 players to replace Kane. Fail miserably, but I mean, is anyone I'm far more scared of Lukaku going to Chelsea than I am Kane to City. I don't know why, because Kane's numbers are phenomenal and his knowledge of the league, but just Lukaku back to Chelsea is really, really scary.
Like if I'm City, I would have gone for Lukaku. Do you know what I mean? But that's my personal preference. And again, like you say, okay, well, you've got that relationship with De Bruyne from the national team and stuff. Again, I think that's terrifying. So I'm glad that they haven't done that. But
I just think stylistically,
world class. Like there's no bones about it. Like Kane can do a lot of what Lukaku can do too. So it's just personal preference, probably stylistically for me. But look, it's going to be different. Like again, they're 2 big additions to our main rivals. Hopefully
we haven't even spoken about
in period, maybe.
We haven't even spoken about and I'm kind of glad because they're relevant. They should be, but Sancho and Varane to United are 2 huge signings.
Yeah, Varane's a brilliant signing. In fairness,
Varane is very much is the marquee signing there. But we don't really know where Sancho's ceiling is and how he can translate those numbers in Germany over to England and where he's even going to play.
Yeah,
but Varane. United have had a weak link there for so long. You could argue Harry Kane in certain situations is a weak link, but I think that's a bit unfair. I actually do rate him as a centre half. And now having Varane in beside him, he seems like a world-class second centre half, as in he's not commercial, but he is the one implementing the guidance of the other. So he'd be a perfect complement to Van Dijk, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he'll go really well. And I think United will be very tough to break down because you're not getting down the flanks. Shaw's a great defender. Wan-Bissaka is a great defender. They still have question marks over the goalkeeper. But that's, Fred and McTominay do a good job in terms of shielding the back 4. So, I can't see United shipping too many goals.
Yeah. I think we'll round it up there, lads. So obviously we're back in Premier League action at the weekend. So God, it's going to be class to see them back out, and obviously the week after at Anfield in Premier League action. So
can we sign off? Can we sign off with a couple of predictions? So I'll give you a couple, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you a couple of categories, right? Bring it off. Let's see who we end up with. So I want 3 relegated teams. I want top goal scorer, I want Golden Glove, and I want Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year.
Oh, okay.
So
Dave, you go ahead if you have one in mind.
See, okay, relegated teams.
Don't.
I obviously haven't given this any pre-thought really. I think Southampton will go down. I think that Newcastle might go down. I think out of the promoted teams, I can see Brentford and Norwich being okay from what I've seen of them. So maybe that leaves Watford as my 3. Yeah.
Yeah, I weirdly, I think that Norwich are going to be okay because I think they've planned for. I think when they went down the last time, they were planning for how do we bounce back better.
Yeah.
They've done what Burnley did a few years ago. I think obviously they're different, very different managers and styles of play, whatever it is. But like Burnley did the same thing where they came up, had a good year, had a good go, went down, walked the championship, and then came back stronger, basically.
Yeah, I'll go with Southampton, Watford, and Burnley. I just think I don't know enough of Burnley. Good luck. My top goal scorer, I'm going to say it's going to be Lukaku. Player of the year is going to be. That's tough. Yeah, I don't know, but I think it'll be in the Chelsea team anyway. It might be Lukaku for both of them, to be honest.
3, I'd say, will go down. I think Palace will potentially go down. Like that, I think Watford, of the 3 who've come up, I don't see them staying up. So I think Palace, Watford. I think then a toss-up between Brighton and Southampton. Burnley, again, as you said, Donnacha, they just seem to have ridden their luck the last couple of years. There was the year where they were, really, really impressive, but I thought they were definitely going to go down last season and then just about pulled it out of the bag, long enough before the end of the season that it didn't seem like they were actually threatened with it.
It's just I'm sorry to say this, but nobody is going to miss Burnley Football Club if they're not in the Premier League. Nobody, not even Burnley fans, are going to miss Burnley in the Premier League.
They aren't, because then they'll be down the Championship and they'll be more likely to have actually more fun weekends seeing them actually score a few goals.
Yeah, God Almighty.
On the young player thing, like, because I think that the rules are the eligibility for young player of the year is ridiculous, but with current guys, I could see it going to Havertz maybe.
I was going to say Havertz, and then that would have made it difficult for me to because Havertz was potentially going to be my player of the year.
Yeah.
Did Foden get young player for City this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, I think Havertz, like, I think he really stepped up second half of the season when Tuchel came in. He doesn't play every week. Got the winner in Champions League final, didn't he? So yeah, like I think I would expect him to kick on a lot next year because he had long COVID and stuff as well, didn't he? Or he had some issue.
I'll say Lukaku top goal scorer. I'll say De Bruyne player of the year. I'll say Havertz young player of the year, and that makes it look like Liverpool are going to really struggle. But I just think it's going to be very closely fought. I could see there being 6 or 7 points between the top 4 by the time we get to May.
I still think that Salah is most likely to get Golden Boot, to be honest.
Hope so.
Yeah, like I think he went up a level last year in a sense, despite having like some bad spells when we were just generally terrible. And I think he just looks like he hasn't scored in pre-season. I think he's going to just rip into Norwich.
Yeah, he's going to explode. Yeah,
I just see that happening. And again, if you come back to FPL, like, there's no one else in that game that I would rather own than Mohamed Salah.
Oh yeah, he's captain for week 1. There's like ever since he's come to the Premier League,
3 and beyond.
I don't think I've had Salah. I don't think I've had Salah outside, not like out of my team since he's arrived in England.
Yeah, I'm going to say Salah for top scorer. I just think he's so just on a mission to score as many goals for Liverpool as he possibly can. I think Havertz is a good shout for young player of the year. I think if Liverpool were to have the season I think they can have in terms of winning the league or coming close to winning the league, I think if he avoids injuries, I think Thiago could be in with a shout for player of the season. Because if we're in a league winning or a league challenging team or season, I think he's going to be one of the reasons why we're so well run, well oiled kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was just sensational for us the last 10 games of the season.
Yeah.
Really was.
He was the best player on the pitch in every one of those games. I would go as far as to say.
When he's unburdened by every defensive responsibility, he obviously does retain defensive responsibility when Fabinho is sitting there. But when Fabinho is beside him and he can play a bit more football, he just is. It seems like he's doing everything he can do everything way quicker than you, but not running, obviously not running, but in terms of,
definitely not running backwards, I would say. Like,
Yeah.
running back towards his own
in
goal.
terms of his
Specifically.
distribution, he seems to have so much time to make the right decision, always makes the right decision.
Yeah.
Am I right?
It's almost like a machine learning midfielder.
Am I right in saying that the only time we've seen Thiago and Henderson play midfield together was Everton?
The derby, yeah.
That's right.
Like, Thiago came in for the Southampton game, which was the first game that Henderson played at centre back. So, like, you know, we haven't seen what the midfield was supposed to look like last year at all, essentially.
No.
Yeah, like this dream midfield of like our three best midfield, we've barely ever, if ever, gotten to see them play together.
Like,
We won't see them this weekend either.
Well, what I would assume to be like our first choice team last season was pretty much what played against Everton that day, but we had Adrian in goal, you know. So like,
Yeah, exactly.
Had a first choice team out for over a year. So yeah, look, like so much cause for optimism from a Liverpool perspective. I really like that Thiago shout. I think that if he stays fit, there's every chance he could be that player. Even if we come third, he could still
player
the season just because of how good he is, and particularly like a PFA thing where his peers are
Yeah,
again, I think he's that kind of player that everyone says, look, this guy's incredible.
Yeah. I think Trent could potentially have a huge season too. I think this might be the season where Trent starts to move.
Yeah.
From right back.
Yeah, I think he'll grab a few more goals this season as well.
He's so good. Like his distribution is just insane. Yeah. It'll be a big season. I'm really pumped now. We've got a great slot. We've got like Saturday night football. We've got the 5:30 slot against Norwich. So it's hopefully we get off to a positive start. And
let's be having you.
There we go. The season we won the league, we played Norwich on the first game of the season. So hopefully that's a good omen. So you heard it here first, lads. Liverpool going to win the league. So thanks for joining us, lads, and we'll chat to you soon.